Welcome to In Sequence. It's a comics podcast for everyone. I am Matt, and these are your panelists.
Hi, I'm Jill.
I'm Robin.
And I'm Scout.
And today we have a special guest panelist with us, Bluzo.
Hi, I'm Bluzo. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, Bluzo.
Hi, Bluzo.
Today we're talking about Blue Period, and Bluzo is the person that said, hey, I wonder if you would like Blue Period, Matt. And that is the reason that I have read all 16 volumes that are available in English right now, and it's the reason that we're talking about the first 6 of those volumes here on the show today, which is, I'll just say, I know we're going to get critical about it, but also thank you for making that introduction for me.
I'm so happy to have done that for you. Yeah.
And thank you for being here with us.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I enjoy the show.
Thank you.
Blue Period is a manga that is written and illustrated by Tsubasa Yamaguchi. It is published by Kodansha, and like I said, it is still ongoing, but there are 16 volumes currently out in English, and I believe 18 in Japanese. After a drunken all-nighter with the boys, Yatori Yaguchi notices how the buildings in Shibuya seem blue in the early dawn. For a school art assignment, he paints his blue Shibuya. The piece is praised by his school's art teacher and a handful of art club members, as well as the very friends that he was out with that early morning. This single moment of validation completely reshapes Yatora's life as he joins schools. Sorry, shut me down.
Sorry.
Shibuya. The single moment. I can't do it. Okay. This single moment of validation completely reshapes Yatora's life as he joins his school's art club and sets his sights on art school. But there's one catch. The only school his family can afford is also Japan's most competitive art school, Tokyo University for the Arts. Yeah, that is the first 6 volumes of Blue Period are about Yatora's journey in his hopes for getting into TUA. I want to say this right now. I read TUA as Tua every time
I did too.
I open up this book. How are you saying TUA? Are we saying Tua? What are we saying?
Tua.
I continually said Tua.
Yeah, I was always saying Tua in my head.
I guess I'm the only TUA head here.
Wow.
I feel supported and backed up by everyone else reading this as Tua as well, so I'm going with Tua.
Tua was my initial instinct, and then I trained myself out of it as I continued reading the manga, so I guess this just shows that I hold myself back, and I should just live my Tua dreams.
You should just live your Tua truth.
my Tua.
No.
I will just call out that the mangaka went to Tua, like IRL, as well as the school TAI, which is an arts high school that gets referenced in this book that did really exist and no longer exists. So
Rip.
She's speaking from her own experience, which I think is pretty obvious when you read this book. Mm-hmm. Does anyone want to give me their early impressions of Blue Period? I know that for a lot of us, this was our first time reading it. For me, it was a reread.
So I think I had mentioned this to you before. I don't remember if it was on call or not, but I had read I think it was the first couple chapters. At one point, I think they were free on the K-Manga app or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I'd read the first couple chapters and I got through that, and then I had not picked it up again until now. Mm.
So I actually read it for the first time 4.5 years ago at the recommendation of my brother, who also recommended me Chainsaw Man. So I was reading this alongside Chainsaw Man at the same time. And that was the first time in quite a while that we're both artists and we're both interested in art. And we both got into manga and anime again, kind of around the same time after being interested in it previously, kind of on and off our whole lives. So it was a very interesting double feature, I guess, between those two. And I really enjoyed it a lot when I first got into it, in part because I was also getting much more back into art around that time at the same period, So I think it hit me right at the correct moment. But yeah, and then I kind of kept up with it on and off for a little while. It's a little harder with monthlies. I feel like you have to be really dedicated to it to just sort of keep up with that cadence. But yeah, this was my first time rereading it basically since I read it 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, this is pretty much my first experience with it. Willa, my co-host on Girl Mode, has been telling me to read it forever. But as usual, I take like a year and a half from her recommending something to me actually doing it. I tried watching the anime, but I gave up after like one episode, and
Matt
It's not
shaking
good.
his head.
It's really not good.
so this is my first actual experience of the manga. I just had like a vague idea of what it was from that aborted attempt to watch that show.
I had heard about it vaguely. I think I often got it mixed up with Blue Lock, another manga that is current. And so every time I would be like, which one is this? Is this the soccer one? No, it's not the soccer one. So this was my first time reading it. And I think that it was an extremely interesting experience to read about a teenager going through art school stuff in Japan as an adult who has a long and complicated history with art school.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of like the things that I found the most interesting about it come from.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting book. I think the things that I resonate the most with are specifically, it's mostly Yatora, but it's also some other characters dealing with how people perceive their art and how they perceive the art of other people. I think that is when Blue Period is the most interesting, when it has the most valuable things to say is often when it is like in the head of an artist. And it's why I often recommend this, and I find other people recommending it to people that are like, make anything, like you should probably at least check this manga out. If you're the kind of person that makes a podcast or like does visual art or is a singer of some kind, like it's at least worth finding out if this manga is for you or not. And I don't know, I just resonate so much with like the like self-doubt that a lot of these characters have. And that's a lot of what I'm getting out of it. You made a reference to Blue Lock, and I want to like call out, I listened to the manga splaining episode on Blue Period several months ago, and a takeaway that they had was that they called Blue Period a sports manga, despite it being a manga about going to art school. And I think that is a really, really apt description for what this thing is. You're getting a lot of explanations of like, hey, how does the Japanese art school system work? What are the costs of private versus public universities? What are the various steps and like the rising stakes as you get through the steps of getting into a public university for art school? And I think also importantly, at every point, the sort of team, in this case, like the various art classes that the main character is a part of, kind of have overlapping members, but the membership changes as well as he's going from like prep school or from art club to prep school to like, you know, actually exam prep as well. I think it is doing a lot of the same things that a lot of sports manga and sports anime have done. I don't know. There's that like golf anime that is out there. I forget what it's called, but my husband watched it recently, and I was watching, I was like, this feels a lot like Blue Period.
Interesting.
That was definitely, I mean, not the golf. I don't know anything
about the golf anime.
But
I think it might be called like, I think Birdie's in the title. Maybe I'm making that up.
I'm gonna look it up really quick.
Birdie Wing golf girls story.
what is it?
I don't know. I
Not
just
that
Googled
one.
golf anime and that came up.
Nope, it's Rising Impact. I guess there's
damn.
more than one golf anime.
Oh, whoops. Okay.
Okay, the Birdie Wing looks cute though. Hold on.
That's what I'm wondering.
I now want to watch Birdie Wing.
Yes.
But that was one of the things I immediately picked up on about the structure of this is, oh, this is just a sports anime, or in some ways it is also like a Dragon Ball, an OG Dragon Ball, or a little bit of a Hunter x Hunter. Like a young boy's adventure, learning about the world in a lot of ways. Both of those structures feel in like the manga is in conversation with those things in ways that I found really interesting.
So an interesting thing that I actually saw in some interviews as well is Tsubasa Yamaguchi has said several times that she meant for Yatora to be a sort of inversion of a shonen protagonist, where like you have, you know, this character, this boy who is like extremely good at this one thing and hopelessly bad at everything else, and instead wanted to sort of flip that on its head and have this boy who's sort of like generically good at most things while also being this counter to typical artist stereotypes of like what an artist character might look like, and instead having this like fashionable playboy kind of character. And like I do find that to be like a compelling idea for a protagonist, and I think having the form reflect that so effectively, I think think is such an interesting way of like making sure that like art is such a generic and interesting topic that I'm sure there's many people who are interested in it, but might not know the nitty gritty of like what complementary colors are, or even like, you know, different types of perspective, etc. And being able to explain it like very directly and be like, no, we're going to hold your hand and explain every step of the, you know, way, like how this goes. Yeah, it did feel like I was reading haiku at sometimes, you know, in a good way, I'd say. That like, again, when I started reading this, when I was getting back into art as someone who did not have like formal art school education, I also really picked up on that, you know, like sort of like reifying the like little bits of like art education that I, you know, cobbled together off Tumblr or whatever. And then also like teaching me other stuff as well that I really enjoyed. Yes.
Yeah.
I never watched sports anime. I don't know. I have nothing to say.
I don't know. I dabble in sports anime, but I don't really, I don't know. I don't follow it that closely. But I agree it being a sports manga does feel accurate.
It also has the same structure as a Glee, but we don't have to go there.
Guys, can we remove Matt from the call?
Is Glee a sports manga? Is Glee a sports anime?
I think Glee might have been a sports anime.
Oh my God. When is the Glee manga adaptation coming out? We can do that.
I think we found the Glee Archie comic a while back. We have to read it at some point.
That is true.
Similar to what you were saying, Bluzo, about the ways that you mentioned, the ways that this manga sort of holds your hand through early art principles in a way that resonated with you as somebody who didn't have a lot of formal education but had picked up bits and pieces here and there. Conversely, I think a lot of my own like reactions to stuff in this book actually came a lot more from a point of, oh, you are like looking at Yaguchi and going, you are like a little baby. You know nothing. There are so many things. You know nothing. You know nothing of art. You little precious small baby.
Yeah.
Which of course is the point of the thing. But it was so funny how my reactions so often were like, what do you mean? What do you mean you've never thought about composition before? And then going, no, Scout, not everybody is you. Of course he hasn't thought about composition before.
Yeah, I will say the flip side of this that I didn't jive quite as well with was I felt like a lot of times like this sort of quick pace of how they're explaining a lot of the artistic principles to you was also mirrored in a lot of the, for lack of a better word, emotional education that Yatora was receiving. And it felt sometimes a little unearned. Like we're still in the spoiler-free section, so like I won't go into details and can go into details later of some things that didn't feel quite right. But like kind of similarly to the artistic principles, but more so for the emotional education, I was like, I need him to suffer a little bit more through these, you know? Like it just feels like someone's telling him 3 lines and then he's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
You know, in a way that felt like really frustrating and really unsatisfying. Because I also think, as with a lot of good shonen protagonists, part of what I like about Yatora is when he's being a bad person. Because I think that makes him, like, it's interesting to see him butt up against other characters and, like, show, like, the flaws of his character and show, like, how he moves through the world. And I wanted people to challenge him on that, you know? And sometimes I felt like the manga was aware of his limitations, but would like kind of superficially recognize it and sometimes would reconcile with it in these sort of like light bulb moments. But there wasn't enough reckoning for my taste, you know, with his character. And it's interesting having just talked about the artistic stuff because I think actually those two things mirror each other quite well and maybe fed into that sort of like unsatisfying sort of narrative emotional resolution happening at the same time with the plot.
Yeah. I feel like there's almost an inverse thing happening there too with I'll just say I did not care for this book like much at all. And I agree the pacing on a lot of that like character development stuff was very quick and often felt very unearned. But at the same time, a lot of the pacing on the art stuff felt very off in the opposite direction where it would be like there's a new art challenge or whatever. So one of the professors is like, here's a lesson you're going to learn, little Yaguchi. We're going to teach you about composition. Here's how you work composition. And then it's like the next next page is him kind of reciting the same thing. Okay, here's what I've learned about composition. And the next page is him drawing and going, okay, I'm going to apply what I've learned about composition. And then the next page is the final piece. And it's like, here's how I've demonstrated what I learned about composition. And it just felt so repetitive. I was like, my dude, you don't need to like
it's both
narrate every thought you have.
And I think it's kind of both things where it's too fast to really show that he has earned the lesson that he's learned, and it's too repetitive in that he is only ever regurgitating the lesson that he was given instead of having new thoughts about it a lot of the time.
I think when this book works is when he is taking the things he's merging like the things he's learning about himself and about life and the things he is learning about art. And I think very often those things are quite siloed, where he's only learning about art and it's not applying to the outside world. I've also found a lot of the art stuff was pretty didactic, where it's just like it like felt like reading a textbook at some points. And I was thinking about it as I read because I do really enjoy. I feel like I've seen a couple things recently that it's like you're kind of learning something as you read it or you watch it. Like I was thinking of Yuru Camp, which is like just a show about like girls going camping in the woods. And there's all these cute little moments where it's like it'll like teach you how to like light a fire and stuff. But it does it in this like stylistically interesting and kind of cute way. And here it's just like we're going to explain the principles of art to you. And I felt a bit disappointed in those moments because I was like there are so many more like imaginative, engaging ways you could be teaching us these lessons, but it just kind of felt like a lecture at many points. Yeah, and that's just a bit disappointing for me.
I'm definitely with you on that. Like there were certain moments. I think one that worked for me for like the teaching part was there's that panel of the tissue box where it's like showing how changing one line can like make them look different. And I think that was done really well. And then there's like a full page panel explaining like, here are the different types of composition. And I'm like, okay, there's S's and there's circles and there's triangles. Got it.
So as a person who doesn't have any of that knowledge, like I think the thing I came in here understanding was like complementary colors, and that was about what I had. Even reading it again the second time, I was like, oh, this is really helpful for me to like wrap my head around what this person is going through. And specifically the composition examples, that's just not a thing that I would have been able to like relate to, reference whatsoever. So even just like having a visual list was helpful for me to like parse what he's going through at the time. And I think that that's just because like the art that I am creating myself is in a different medium entirely. And like I know the various tool sets on like, you know, how to improve a singing voice and how to approach an Italian piece versus, you know, a Spanish language piece versus a Russian piece or whatever. You know, those are things that I have like all like the little, you know, tweaks and schooling to have understood at this point. But the basic building blocks of a piece of visual art is just not something that like I totally understand. Like I've done some photography here and there, but like I got the rule of threes and that's about it. Like, you know, like
hey, that's a big one.
That's like that's the best composition I've got for photography. So I agree it is didactic, but I think for me personally, that with the experience I'm bringing to it, that really works for me.
To put in an example of where I think this did work for me, I'm going to put a couple images in chat here. And I think this works because it feels less didactic and it does the thing that I think it often doesn't, which is tie his life to like the principles he's learning. This is a sequence where he and another character are like out on New Year's Eve. And Yutora is notice like they've just learned in class like how to use different tools and different materials to get effects in their art, and he's out and like looking at like he sees a woman's like kind of transparent plastic purse and a billboard with streaks of rust on it, and he's noticing these little details and thinking to himself about how he could use the techniques he just learned to depict those things in art. And I think it's a really cool way of showing that he is learning without just like telling you the lessons firsthand. And then the end of the sequence is him saying, there's an endless number of cool things in the world. I just failed to notice them before. So it like is merging the idea of like learning more about art is him learning more about himself and about the world. And I think that is where it really sings for me. And I think that happens so infrequently.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if he actually learned how to be a more observative person?
Yeah. Good Lord. Would it ever?
I really agree. And I'm I think a lot of the moments where the didactic nature resonated more for me and had more payoff was when they cooked for a while and they incubated for a while, and then there was payoff where he was like, you know, having this like delayed light bulb moment instead of like on the next page. And I think also like I have less of a problem with the didactic nature of it, but I do definitely wish it was played less straight overall, because it does really read like a tutorial, and I don't think that like inherently is a bad thing at all. But I do wish it was more interested in like challenging the reader at all, or challenging like what sort of narrative they're trying to tell, because I think there is something really interesting and rich about the idea of like art school is notoriously complicated, you know, in terms of like the structure of like what it means to teach, like try and put art into something that's teachable, and pass that down to students. And I think there is like a million different ways that can be sort of like pushed up against, you know, where like maybe, you know, like Uba, like one of the teachers, or tells Yatora something and then he's like, wait, this isn't quite matching or something, you know. Even something as basic as that, I think would have been really welcome friction for that didactic form.
I'm going to just put like a flag out there that I have a question for you when we get to spoilers.
I had a point about, not in terms of the way that it feels like it's teaching, but in terms of the like contrast of the art, which I think a couple of other folks may have said. But some of the like panels and pages that I liked the most are where I really love how there is so much like actual art pieces that are put into this book. One of the volumes that I was reading in the back, it said that a lot of the pieces that are used are actual submissions from TUA exams, which I think is really cool. But I really just enjoyed these moments where you have the background or the scenery, the setting of the page is drawn in our, you know, typical our mangaka's style. And then there is a piece of art that looks like you just kind of like printed it out from the museum's website and put it in there. And then our protagonist drawn in front of it. So there's like this really deep contrast of the real world art and the art that is making up this story. And I just really loved, I just think that was a really fun image to see when it kind of pops up.
Yeah, you posted an early example of that in our notes, Jill. It was like Yatora standing in front of one of Mori's pieces.
Yes.
With like the angels. And I think that might be the first time it happens or something, but that page is so good.
That page is so good.
I love that effect too.
And I've seen this in like I feel like I've seen this in a couple of other, like, not necessarily mangas either, but a couple of other comics and things like that. But I just think using a different style as contrast in a piece just always is really eye-catching, and I like it a lot. I don't have anything fun to say.
Yeah, I think that moment works particularly well also because it is this moment of Yatora seeing something that is like almost taking him out of his own reality. Like it is opening up to the possibility that this is something that like a classmate of his could do, and by extension he could do. And it does feel like almost otherworldly. Like he's looking at this like supernatural object.
Yeah, it's
so
like
having it rendered in a different
awe-inspiring.
style feels, yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, and it's echoed later when he does like the same size piece for his like freeform prep school project. And that quote is like, I finally felt like my art could swallow me whole.
Yeah.
And like those, when I think about Blue Period, it's those moments that I'm like, that's the reason that I love it so much, is like Yatora's appreciation both for the art and for like the process and like the validation that brings, not necessarily from others, like part of that is from others, but also just like the validation of like working to be better at something. We even just like in the introduction, I told the story of the painting he makes of Shibuya. And he says like it was the first time he felt like he had a real conversation is when people were like talking to him about his art. Like that is the stuff. That's the stuff.
That's the stuff.
Yes, I mean, since we're mentioning it, there is maybe my favorite page of the entire comic happens in that like first issue or second issue where he's getting this idea to paint, like he's got it with, you know, for a night drinking, and he sees Shibuya in the morning and it inspires him and he starts painting it, and it's blue even though it wasn't in real life. And one of his friends sees him painting this as an assignment and says like, it smells like trash though. Like they're kind of like making fun of him. him. Like, why are you drawing this? Why is this so important to you? And his friend says, it still smells like trash, though. And there's a series of panels where Yatora says, maybe it does smell like trash and the buildings were never blue, but I like all of that. Ellipses, oh, liking something and saying so is scary. And there is like, that is one of those moments of connecting his like artistic self with his sense of identity. And
yes.
I was really excited at that moment that I thought that's what more of this book was going to be about, of him coming to understand himself better through his art. And like that idea, liking something and saying so is scary, is like something I've felt so deeply so much. And I think it's a thing that like if you're making anything in any way, you have to get over. Like it's a thing you have to deal with, of just being able to be like, I like this is good, and like to be confident enough to say that, and seeing that expressed here I thought was really really, I don't know, moving in a way. Yeah, that moment really stuck with me throughout everything that comes after.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree. And like that stuff's the reason I'm still reading like at volume 16 is because like it may not necessarily like give as much of that as like I want all the time, but like it gives me enough of it that I'm like, whew, it's just like a new shot in the arm every time.
Yeah, Robin, that really speaks to something I took away from this, which is that like, yeah, this is a manga about art, but really this is a manga about the mortifying ordeal of being known.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And maybe it doesn't always deliver on that as well as it could, but I think there's a lot of moments where it does really hit.
I did wonder I think it was when we were talking about like the art and specifically with Mori's art being presented there as something where Yatora has this moment where he realizes, wait, this is something a peer could do. This is maybe something I could do. I also did wonder, like how much of the like shortcomings for me for the manga, to speak in sort of like a general spoiler-free sense, is caught up in this idea of accessibility, because I think that's really like Tsubasa Yamaguchi's sort of goal in a lot of this, is to make these concepts like feel very approachable and feel very accessible. And with a story like Yatora's, it's inherently one of like this kid who decides like a year and change before the exam that, you know, he's going to be an artist and he's going to try his best and try his hardest to get into the toughest art school, essentially. And that, you know, I guess I won't say whether or not it happens. Stay tuned to find out. But yeah, and I think I just like, I tend to have more issues with those sorts of works, I guess, when they, you know, really lean super far in that direction. But obviously those works resonate with like a lot of different people, which is why it's like a really common way of telling stories, you know? But, I
mean, it's like, it's extreme hubris too, though, on Yatora's part to assume that he could do that.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I have one more thing before we move on, which is that I want to out loud give a huge shout out to Tsubasa Yamaguchi and her team for all of the extremely thorough artist crediting that goes into the back of every one of these volumes.
Yeah.
That's like a sort of like more a shop talk thing than anything about the book itself, but I really appreciated that there is both this manga is touched by a lot of artists that aren't Tsubasa Yamaguchi. And that is like said so on each of the pages. Like whenever there is an image on the page during the book and in the back of the book, there's a list. But the artists are always credited. Now it's in small font, but it's got to be in small font. There's not that much room in here.
Yeah, and there's a lot.
But then
of
they're
artists.
shouted out at the end of the book as well.
Yeah,
and they're shouted out at the end of the book, and her assistants specifically are also mentioned, which I think is really nice because we've talked a lot on this show about mangaka assistants and how very often they are the unsung heroes of like a manga's production pipeline.
Yes. All right. Let's get into the spoiler section. If someone wants to have a different conversation at the top of the spoiler section, that's fine. But I feel like I can't talk about the rest of this book without talking about Yuka-chan.
Yeah. Yuka-chan, you deserve better.
Okay. I thought we're gonna have more runway for this.
I feel like it dominates my feelings about the book. The first time I read it and in a reread, Yuka-chan is a classmate of Yatora's, and she is introduced as this like kind of, I would say like the cool kid of the art club, right? The one that like is maybe like better than the rest of them. And what I will say is I think it's pretty clear that Yuka is a trans girl and that the story and also Yatora and a lot of other characters do not treat her properly. And I would say a lot of that is on Yamaguchi.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, because like the manga at the end, when it's sort of like of the first volume, when it's like introducing all the characters, like I guess misgenders Yuka. But also
Constantly.
I found like a interview with Yamaguchi pretty recently where like the interviewer was asking her about that. And she gave the classic punt of, well, I knew someone who was going through something similar.
So I have this screenshot that I was going, like literally pulled up that I was going to talk about here. So this is an interview with Yamaguchi, and there are two questions in a row here. So the first question, one character whose story resonated with me personally, and many people I know, was Yuka, who goes through an arc regarding their identity and finding out what they want out of life. Can you tell me a little about the inception of their character and the path you wanted them to go on? Yamaguchi. So, you know, things like identity, I did go through the struggle of figuring things out myself as well. When it came to Yuka specifically, I had a friend who was kind of in a similar situation. So that's where I got the idea, that's where I got the inspiration to go into this topic as well. But I think it's just something that everyone goes through. And then the interviewer says, I'd argue there isn't a character like her in many anime or manga these days, so it was great to watch and read about them. Yamaguchi, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed the character so much. And then that's the end of that conversation. And I do agree, like, there's a punt of like, my friend is like this, quote unquote. I think the worst part here is, but I think it's just something that everyone goes through.
Yeah, which is not.
All of us made a face when you said that.
It is something that a very specific subset of people go through.
Yeah.
I think that is the problem. I think I would argue with you, Matt, that it is, when you say it is clear that Yuka is a trans woman, I think the problem that I have with Yuka, or like one of the cores of the problems that I have with Yuka, is that it's not clear.
Yeah.
This is also my thing,
That
Robin.
was also
You
my
could read
thing.
Yuka as a trans woman very easily. You could read Yuka as gender fluid very easily. And so I think that squishiness makes it very hard to like have a good read on her character, because if she's a trans woman or if she is a gender fluid person, that's two very different like experiences. And I was thinking a lot about Ushi from How to Be a Relationship, who is the character who at one point in that manga is like dealing with, they're the only person who doesn't really want to date anyone. And there's a conversation that they kind of have with themselves about like, I don't want to date anyone. And what does that mean? And I don't, if I have to date someone, I will have to be seen as a woman. And I don't want that. And then it just leaves it at that.
Yeah.
Like there is never a resolution of like, here is Ushi's identity. And I think that ambiguity in that sense works fine and like works really well for the character. There's a different kind of ambiguity with Yuka, which is not characterological ambiguity. It is ambiguity in the writing. I totally agree with you that this is really falls on the feet of Yamaguchi.
Yeah.
Because like there are so many times, like, yeah, like you said, Bluzo, in the book when they are talking about characters, Yuka-chan is misgendered. It's like she's just written about in this really weird way. And it's also a thing where like, I don't know, I could go on forever about Yuka, but it's like everyone in the book calls her Yuka and uses feminine pronouns, and just that's just the way it is. The only people who don't are her abusive parents and Yatora, who we are supposed to be sympathetic to. And that makes it impossible for me to be sympathetic to Yatora, because he is like, whatever Yuka's identity is, he is being transphobic. Like he is dead naming and misgendering someone. And in that way, it also like Yuka also colors my perceptions of this book, because the way that Yatora treats her makes him a bad person. And so when all throughout the book, people are constantly talking about what a good person Yatora is, I'm like, that's not true. There's many other reasons why I don't think he's a good person, but that is the main one where I'm just like, no, he's actually a bad person. Like he's not just neutral. And yeah, the handling of her just throughout, I think is sorry, you're exploding over there, Bluzo. I just keep talking, but there's just a lot to take in with Yuka. And I think she is a character who I have a lot of sympathy for, but who is so poorly written that every time she shows up, I start getting nervous, because I'm like, what are they going to do with her?
Robin, what you said, my note that I put kind of against Scouts was like, in the real world, gender does not need to be cut and dry. Like it can be like, you know, it is very like whatever works for you, but this is a narrative, and the way that Yuka-chan's gender is being presented is being done so as a narrative plot point, and that's why I think the lack of clarity falls flat, because it is not saying something about there being a lack of clarity. It is simply that it is just not doing the work that it needs to do.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say is in a real life situation, I would not be interrogating Yuka-chan about her identity and like what she identifies as.
Right.
But this is a book and this is a story and this character is being put in here for a seemingly specific purpose.
Yeah, that's part of what jumped out at me like in the interview, because I get really frustrated when creators who are writing a story use like sort of the excuse, but also, you know, participate in this misunderstanding that these characters are people and not characters that are meant to be used to a narrative end. This was also part of why I got very irritated at like, you know, games like Consume Me, for example, where I'm like, that can't be your out, you know, that like it's like a, you know, relating it to a real person, because ultimately this isn't a real person and it shouldn't be. And stories are much more interesting when they're not. And I was also very frustrated by all of it, because I think you could tell a really interesting sort of like deconstruction of Yatora and like deal with him being transphobic, because he is ultimately like the ultimate dude, kind of, you know, like this like really privileged kid who does not realize that he's privileged at all. And like he coasts on so much privilege. But the book is so, like the entire series is so uninterested, except in these like kind of superficial moments of interrogating that. And that was my biggest irritation, because it's so upfront the entire time. And really, like, I almost exploded when I was reading. I literally wrote it down in volume 3, chapter 10. He tells Yuka, "You can talk to me if you want," after he's been nothing but awful to her, obviously. And then she says, "Yatora, you're a nice guy."
It's like, are you?
That
I was like,
kills me.
no, he's not. And also Yuka wouldn't think that, you know?
Yeah.
Or like if she is thinking that, then that's something to be really critical of, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I guess could be an interesting narrative beat, but isn't what's happening at all, you know? And I was just like extremely frustrated by all of it.
Yeah.
I'm playing Persona 4 Golden right now, and I feel extremely similarly about the problems that game notoriously has in its narrative as I do about what Yamaguchi has done here with Yuka-chan. Like, I think they are fundamentally the same problem. They are people who are trying to make a comment on something that they don't know exactly what they want to say, and then therefore kind of coast on what you were saying, Bluzo, this idea that like, oh, these are real people and real people are complicated, right? And that serves neither of these narratives very well.
Yeah. The thing that Yuka-chan has also like repeatedly said, or kind of said to stand in for, is like they're a person who just like doesn't conform, and they, you know, like that's the thing that like Tsubasa keeps saying and keeps coming up in things. Is just like, and then, you know, misgendering them and referring to them as like a boy in women's clothes, as if like that is the thing going on, where it's just like, oh, it's this one-dimensional aesthetic difference, and that's why people treat them differently. And it's like, no, you're dealing with like real categories of identity that have much more depth to it than I think you are equipped to write about. And it just like makes me distrust the writer that she doesn't seem to realize that she's doing that.
Right. And that's kind of what I was about to say is I think that there's a reading here that I almost think is maybe the intention and the reason that Yatora often gets like sort of shown in a positive light in his interactions with Yuka-chan, which is that the feminine clothes and the feminine presentation and acting feminine is somehow not Yuka-chan's real identity and is like some front that she's putting on. And I kind of wonder, like, that's what I mean, you know, like, is it really, is it a trans narrative, or is it just, is it something that you can read as a trans narrative, but isn't actually meant to be written like that, which doesn't mean that it isn't one, but that was part of what was so confusing.
I think that is that might be the core of the problem, because that's one thing that I was thinking too. I think this might be not meant to be a trans narrative, but it is. Like, it very clearly, you can't
exactly
use
what a
these
trans
symbols.
narrative is, and therefore you run into the issue of like its impact over intent at this point.
Yeah. And when you said, Scott, that's this thing about like Yatora kind of seeing the Yuka-chan is like a persona that is draped over this person. There is a sequence near the end of our reading, I think, where Yatora and Yuka go like to the ocean together, and it made me want to throw my book out the window. It is very clearly meant to be this moment of these two people like coming together and like starting to understand each other. But there is, and like it's obviously all filtered through Yatora, who is the viewpoint character. So it it's about what it means to him as opposed to what it means to Yuka, because she's not like a fully realized human being. But there's a part where he says, I've cut out the thing that Yuka just said, so there's a little context missing, but she has like kind of changed the way she's speaking recently to have a more like feminine presentation. And he says, so you speaking in a more feminine way lately, that's just easier to understand. That's not understanding, is it? To force yourself into a category. And it is like him trying to, it's him saying that like you presenting yourself this way is somehow like insincere, or it is her trying to fit a role for other people. And then he says, I know what, then he says, I know what it's like to feel like you have to create a character for yourself. I get it. Which is like not what's happening. Like that is awful. And then in the next panel, he literally misgenders her again. So it's like the hubris to be like, I understand you and what you're going through immediately before you do the thing that you've been doing to her this whole time. It's just maddening.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because I feel like what is actually an interesting part of Yotora's character is that he so phenomenally completely fails to understand anyone who has a different experience from him. You know? And he just doesn't realize that's what's happening, you know? But like the manga still sees him as this like all capable being of like understanding these experiences. And it's like, you know, there's stories with protagonists that are interested in interrogating that. I will point to 100 Line with Takumi Sumino, which does like a fantastic job of that. That's my obligatory 100 line mention for the episode. But like, I was just like repeatedly shocked at like how clear it was that he wasn't able to understand someone else's experience. And then like sort of hoping that this was the setup for, you know, that point of friction. And then it just never materialized, you know. He would always be like, actually, I really get it. And I'm like, no, you don't. Yeah. You really don't. And that's okay, you know, like that should be worked out. And it's interesting, you know.
It doesn't have to be about, you don't have to relate to everybody.
There are things that I did really like about that scene at the Ocean Hotel, specifically for the artistic journey. I think in a better written story, for Yuka-chan specifically, I feel like that would have been a really like impactful moment. Specifically, I was looking at like the body language there when they're drawing their nude poses, and how Yaguchi has like this very confident pose. He's got the sketch pad like leaning up against his hip as he's like looking at himself in the mirror. And then Yuka-chan is sitting on the floor, like legs kind of tucked over her crotch, like kind of almost like shrinking in on herself. And I was like, wow, this would be really good if like we had a little bit more like clarity and impact with it. But I liked what it did for the art journey, and I think it was like the scene I think that I'll remember the most. I think that it was really like a really good character moment, even if it didn't carry through the way that I kind of hoped it would. And I think the other thing that like really helped that scene for me to be like a little bit more impactful for Yuka is, you know, Yaguchi kind of talks about like with his teacher, he's like, oh yeah, we shared our drawings with each other. We don't see Yuka-chan's like nude self-portrait. Like we don't know what she looks like. And I think that's kind of goes hand in hand with like, okay, why is the narrative not showing us that? Like that would have been a key moment to be like, this is the self-portrait of how Yuka-chan sees herself without clothes. And I think that would have been really impactful, but I think it kind of speaks to Yaguchi's character that like we as the readers don't see that. So like it's clearly not important to him. Like,
yeah, and it's clearly not important to the mangaka as well.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, it could have been a really, really good moment. I did still really enjoy it as a moment. I think it was a really interesting thing, specifically because I feel like you don't usually see like non-sexualized nudity in a manga, which I think was really interesting that this manga does, because of course it's like, you know, artistic rather than trying to sexualize everything. But it was just a unique moment to me that stands out and has like some really great parts of it, and then the parts that like really butt up against kind of the issues I had with the narrative and the characters. if any of that made sense. Who knows?
Yeah, I actually, that builds on one of the things that I did enjoy about like how like there were so few, like when I was talking earlier about how like the really quick resolution of a lot of these threads felt really unsatisfying. I did really appreciate narratively how like they had this meditation on like self-portrait into the art exam and those themes for the art exam. I felt like that led to some more interesting like emotional resolution, because a lot of what I was particularly frustrated by early on in the series was I didn't understand why he was resonating with art, and I didn't really understand what he was trying to communicate and what he was interested in. And there was that sort of like Uba describes it as like narcissism, and I really wanted more of that. And I did really enjoy like it ultimately culminating and him saying like, this painting is mine alone, the world as I see it. Like that all felt very satisfying, with like him clicking all of these things into place relative to a lot of the other, you know, like very abbreviated emotional journeys. Yeah,
I do think the stuff as it gets closer to the exams, I do think it does get better. I enjoyed it more because I think it is a lot because of that stuff. There's just like a little more time to breathe, and it does put a lot more focus on the ways in which like art is informing the way that Yatora sees the world and himself at the same time, and is able to like both express and understand himself through art. That for a lot of the earlier books are just very focused on the art and not about what it means, you know.
It feels as though Yamaguchi is getting better at storytelling as the manga progresses.
Yeah, that's I think that would have worked. I think that could have worked. Like the idea of the beginning chapters of this manga feeling unsatisfying in that way because Yatora hasn't learned to talk about it this way, I think is a compelling idea. I just don't think that the book is necessarily doing it on purpose.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know that it's a purposeful thing.
Yeah. But that did occur to me where I was like, oh, that would be cool. Like if that's what was happening.
It's definitely not on purpose.
Yeah.
Any more? I mean, I'm sure that we'll have more thoughts, but do we want to like dive deeper on Yuka before we move on to anything else?
I wanted to say, like, I have a note in here that a lot of the conversations and interactions between Yaguchi and Yuka-chan were standouts for me. And mostly what I mean by that is just that there's a lot of moments where Yuka-chan sort of takes Yaguchi to school with some shit that she says. And I'm like, hell yeah, Yuka-chan, you go Yuka-chan. And unfortunately, like, oftentimes, a little bit with the self-portrait stuff, I think it pays off. But in, like, any other scene with them, there were these moments where I'm like, hell yeah, Yuka-chan said something really cool there. I hope that it affects Yatora Yaguchi's character arc, and that it just doesn't.
Yeah, he's just like, what's with him?
He's like, cool. I'll say, I think unfortunately we also see like 2 or 3 scenes where it's like clear that Yuka's dating life is like kind of a like fucked up stereotype of like a trans, like a really gross negative stereotype of a trans person. And like, it's just, I don't know. That's the stuff that grosses me out. Honestly, even more than like Yatora being oblivious. Like the stuff that grosses me out is like when she's like being broken up with because she's trans or whatever. I just like, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure like the nightclub that she works at is specifically like, that a type of nightclub catering to that particular thing that is not a positive representation of everything. So it is that stuff. I agree with you, Matt, like more so than whatever Yaguchi's got going on with regards to like understanding gender identity. Like that was definitely some of the stuff that like really bummed me out.
And that's not even to say like I'm like here to forgive
the mangaka for sure.
or Yatora or whatever. It's just that stuff was the stuff that I was like, I don't know that I can get through these pages right now.
Yeah.
Not that it all has to be like pretty, but like if you're going to bring it up, like at least have the, you know, language and tools to like actually deal with it in a compelling manner. You know?
Yeah, like there's a story to tackle there, especially with like early on that guy who breaks her up with her and is like, you know, because she's you know, he puts it because she's a boy or whatever, but it's, you know, because she's trans and he didn't realize it. Like that's a story that I'm happy to see explored, but
it's not, you know, done
just by someone who's a little more
given the time or
exploring
done
it, perhaps.
Well.
Yeah. A lot of the Yuka-chan stuff is just like, I don't know that it just doesn't belong in this manga. Like it's a very different. The tone is very different.
It's weird.
The content is very different.
I would almost rather it not be there.
Well, it's a story I would like to see. It's just this is not the version of it that I want to. It's just not.
Yeah, and I don't
well.
know that I don't know that the art manga that's like a sports manga is the platform for it either.
That's exactly why I was like, Yuka-chan deserves her own manga and also better. Like,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, she would need to be like a real character for it to
I
work.
would read a manga about Yuka-chan, given that it was written with the care that it deserves. But
Well, she has a cool arc too.
She does.
Right? Like this idea that she is being like forced into this version of art school out of expectation because the only person that like treats her well is her grandmother.
Yeah,
like
that was
an
interesting.
Interesting
It
piece
is.
of story that could serve its own entire, 20 volume manga.
Right.
Like that's interesting.
yeah, but it's not given the space I think that it needs in order to be as impactful as it could be.
Yeah, I was looking around after we read this just to be like, what are people's impressions of Yuka? Like, what do people think about her? And a lot of it was very celebratory. It was just queer people being like, yay, a queer person in a manga, which is like, I don't know, always a little frustrating when I see a character that's handled as poorly. It's like the things that make you feel seen and feel, joy, your identity are like different for everybody, whatever. But it's always a little frustrating when it's something as like, this is the bar, it just makes me feel like, damn, we should have more to choose from than this, is just kind of the feeling I always got. So that whole conversation had the cadence of like 5 people falling down a hill together.
Yeah.
We're at the bottom now. We gotta
Hold on,
climb back
we're
up
going
out of
down.
the pit.
Hey, I got a scene I want to call out.
Hell
to,
yeah.
to escape from this pit. So you all talked about the scene where they were drawing nudes, and I think that is like a memorable scene for a lot of people. But the scene for me that like is the book is the one where Koi tells Yatora that he's going to pastry school.
I love
That
that
scene
one,
was
but it
really
did give me
good.
High School Musical, like, I bake.
Creme brulee.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe we're doing this. But I did really enjoy it. I think it leads to a very good exchange as you have like stuff about, but I do have to like call out that it did make me think about stick to the status quo.
I call out Zeke the creme brulee guy all the time.
Shout out to Zeke the creme brulee guy.
Shout out to Zeke.
No, I adore that scene, and I think it's because it's like one of the few times Yaguchi gets called on his shit. It rarely happens in this book. And he says, I forget exactly the order of events, but basically like he laughs off something that Koi says, and he says, when you smile like that, it's as if you're telling me you better not step any closer to that. It makes me feel like shit. And I was like, bro,
Whoa.
no one talks to this dude like you do.
Shout out Koi.
Yeah.
I love the scene, and I love Yaguchi's friends for how supportive they are of his art journey.
Yeah.
Like
they don't understand it, but they're supportive.
yeah,
Got the
and
spirit.
they like every time they're in a scene and they have to be talking about art, I'm like, man, these are my guys. Like,
Yeah.
It's the boys.
we're in the spoiler
boys.
section, so I can say he gets into Tua. But they're like, I'll just give y'all like a peek at like later on. They show up at like a cultural festival at Tua to like support him later on. It is, I love these guys, and I love this scene because it shows that it's not just like them supporting him, like him finding this passion has had an effect on their lives as well. These are not just like good guy friends in the background. They are fully realized characters. Yeah, I don't know. I love this crew.
Yeah, and I also feel like they were a really refreshing foil to like, I think it could be totally, and I still think the manga does do this, but it's very easy to slip into like lionizing this like really driven individual effort to like, like this ambition to get into school and to like have these really like high dreams, and to show that like these guys also like lead very fulfilling lives while taking very I don't want to say like non-traditional paths, but like paths that would be seen as like less ambitious and perhaps less approved of by society, of like failing college exams, then being like, you know what, fuck it, I'm not doing that. And still like going on to like be a happy person and have happy lives. And that was like, I did really appreciate that counterweight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just seeing like that they have interior, like that is it's one of the few moments that I felt like there's another character with interiority in this book that is not just Yutora, where like this guy who you could just see as like, you know, like you said, like Yutora's supportive friend who's kind of like earlier on, there's like an insinuation that he's going to like work for the Yakuza. He's like, there's like a scary man who wants to recruit him for a job. And you can kind of see him as this just like sort of well-natured meathead. And then he has this thing where he's like, seeing you follow your dreams made me realize that I was holding myself back. And that gave me the strength to follow my own dreams, which is to like to be a pastry chef. And it's like, it's so good that like you said, like that is a very non-traditional path. And that it is also showing like one of those moments of the totally unintended consequences that you can have on other people around you. Like seeing someone do something that is, you don't have any interest in. It's not related to you in any way. It's not your path. But the fact that they are following a path that they believe in so strongly reminds you that you can do the same thing for yourself. And I thought that moment was really touching as well. Like I that's a real standout for me.
I think this scene speaks to me so like personally, because I will often say the phrase, I didn't have a personality until I was 19. And it's largely because I was growing up queer in an evangelical environment. Like I didn't know who I was like sexuality wise much, but also like just like the basics didn't have really much of an identity. But what that has like led to in my life is protecting myself by like minimizing my own feelings. And I think that's the stuff that makes me relate to a lot of this book is like Yatsura is like discovering parts of his personality. Like, yeah, he's getting into art, but this is also just like about like self-realization. And like, yeah, he's like a piece of shit that doesn't understand his privilege, but like I've been that guy too. So maybe it's a little bit, you know, like it's a little bit relatable for like the negative stuff too. I know that there's another character we're going to talk about this, but this scene specifically had me be like, oh, this guy's just like masking super hard.
Yeah.
Like that is his entire personality is built on like just trying to fit into a room. Like, I don't know, like I got real good at room reading just because of like who I am.
Yeah.
And like, the moment that I clocked like in this reread that like, that's mostly what Yaguchi is doing is like room reading and people pleasing. I was like, oh, I like this book because I'm also neurodiverse.
It was like, I do that derogatory for me. I was like, there's so many moments where I'm like, oh, fuck, that's me. Like, especially when it comes to the room reading and like trying to anticipate others' emotions or reactions to things. And I like have a note of like how complicated I feel about our main character because there are there's a lot of different things going into it, but part of it is like I see a lot of moments where I'm like, that is the shit that I have done and the shit that I do because of the specific, circumstances that have led to my life being the way it is and the way my brain works. And I don't like seeing that in this character. I'm like, I feel seen and I don't want to be in this picture.
I just want to call out that I asked y'all if you had other ideas for further reading and you had to suggested the DSM-5.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a fun joke. I made a lot of jokes beforehand because I was like, if I don't say this now, I'm going to forget. But yeah, so I 100% agree that like there's something there that definitely is like very neurodivergent and also in a lot of ways very uncomfortable to like reckon with seeing in another character.
Yeah, and like I obviously can't speak to either of your experiences, but I know like at least for Yotora's, like it's so heavily tied up in class too, I think, like him doing that and how he navigates the world. And like I am reminded of one of my friends who calls Takumi from 100th Line Tofumi. And I wish there was like a tofu pun that could be made for Yotora because I do think it really does fit with his character and how he like is just so like disimpassioned and how he moves through the world and how he then discovers that. And I think, that's something that like I think I kind of relate to for like how I was like growing up and everything. And I know it's a very common experience. I've met others who have had their own sort of flavor of that. So like I totally see how, Yotora's story spoke to so many people and why Blue Period is as popular as it is. Just beating a dead horse, I guess. I just wish it was interrogated slightly differently. But it is really interesting. And I think it's an excellent point to bring up because it's a really strong through line, I think, for Yotora's character.
I want to talk about Yotasuke. Can we talk about Yotasuke?
Let's talk about it.
Do it.
Evil scout.
Evil scout. Evil scout. Okay. First, two things. One, Yotasuke fucking looks like me. It's scary how much Yotasuke looks like me.
Exactly like Scout. It's scary.
It's frightening. I took a selfie of me with a panel of Yotasuke, and it's scary. We're gonna post that when this episode goes up because I can't stop thinking about it. Two, the Yotasuke Defender has logged on. It's me. I'm the Yotasuke Defender. I actually fucking love Yotasuke.
I think he's a great character. I just don't think he's a good person.
I mean, yeah. I can see
Which,
that.
to be fair, is better than I can say for Yatora.
That's so true.
I think he's got a tough personality. I don't know that I see him as a bad person.
That's probably fair.
Yeah.
That's probably fairer
I
than
think
what I'm saying.
he's abrasive, but he's not like an ass. Like he's
not malicious. He's just a
not
little.
He's not malicious.
He's
Yeah.
yeah.
Why do you love him?
Well, he's me visually. There's also so many things about him that are also me emotionally. I was reading this book and I just kept thinking, if my needs had not been met as a child, I would be Yotasuke. Like, if I had different parents, if I had had to go to American public school, I would be like this because it just feels like he's very autistic coded. I think Yaguchi and Yotasuke are two different kinds of autistic in this essay. No, I won't go into it, but I do have that reading for those characters, and I think that's part of the reason they clash a lot is that they have different forms of a similar neurodivergence. Another thing that I really liked about Yotasuke was that he represents in the story the perspective of art school can, like any school, encourage conformity in harmful ways. There is a point at which he leaves the prep school specifically because he feels as though they are asking him and all of the students to make art to get into school instead of to make art that they want to make. I left art school after taking it, going to college for animation for 3 semesters, specifically because I essentially had creative differences with the heads of the animation department at the school that I went to, where I did not feel as though they would judge my work fairly unless I made work that was the kind of work that they wanted to see. And so I appreciate Yotasuke coming into this story and having that kind of perspective, because I think that there's a lot of this book that builds up the idea of, and it's because it's part of the story. It's part of the story that like the big goal is to get into art school and to pursue art and to continue on this journey in this specific way. And there aren't a lot of perspectives of like, sometimes art school is bad. And sometimes art school is bad. And so I appreciated that part of Yotasuke's personality. And he is deeply, bluntly honest in ways that would be annoying in a room, but are also deeply relatable. There is a panel where he's like, when this is over, I'm going to go home and play Pokemon and sleep. There's multiple times when he says, I don't want to be here. I wish I was anywhere else other than here. And my man, I get you.
The fact that his mom is like, you don't really have a lot of friends. Why don't you call that one guy that you ran into?
His mom is so sweet. I forgot about her.
Perfect.
Shout out to
But it
her
was
mom.
very much like the fact that he calls just to like make up a lie of like, oh, you're busy? Okay, bye. And
Why don't you call the one person who will talk to you?
Yaguchi was like, is he pranking me? And it's like, no, he just needed to get his mom off of his back.
I'll use this opportunity to say, and I don't want this is not me encouraging people to read things if they didn't enjoy what they read, but if you want criticism of art school, I do think the book gets into that a little bit more when Yaguchi is at Tua, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that
makes sense.
There's like an afterword to volume 6 where the mangaka is like, originally this arc was supposed to take 3 volumes, and then it would start the college arc, but it expanded to 6, and I was so mad because I was like, the college college arc sounds like it's probably going to be way more interesting than this. Like, I wish you hadn't stretched this out to 6 volumes. I will say the thing that I like about what is his fucking name? Yotasuke is the way in which like Yotaro butts up against him, like what it reveals about his character. Because for this whole book, he doesn't seem to really care about anybody else except for the one person who doesn't want to talk to him. And it just feels so revealing that he's like, this is the one guy who doesn't want to tell me that I'm good, and therefore I need him to be my best friend.
Yes.
Like, that is such a revealing character detail in a way that like he does not realize, and I really like that. Yeah. Like, he just needs the approval so badly from this one person, and he can't get it. And I do really appreciate that.
Yeah.
This reread really revealed to me how much Yatora is like just a teenage Matt, like just a piece of shit, just an absolute piece of shit. I love being 35 and not a teenager anymore.
It is hard to be a teenager.
It's hard to be a teenager.
We've all been teenagers once.
Honestly, Scout, you liking Yotasuke really transformed this read for me, because it was really the first time I read this, I was just like, it's really hard for me to give him any sympathy. Like, really tough. Like, I think his mom, like, while sweet, is like a little overbearing, and like that's kind of something I related to with him. But also, like, you enjoying him allowed me to read it, not necessarily relate to Yotasuke, but still like see him as an interesting person in relation to the other characters that, you know, he's involved with. I don't remember the exact phrasing that I said the other day. I think he usually takes every option to be an asshole when he's given a chance to be anything else. And that's mostly what I took away from my first read through, other than like him being a good foil for Yaguchi.
Yeah, I think a lot of those moments for me are colored by the fact that it's hard for me to think he's being an asshole when I don't think that he means it to be cruel. I think it's just genuinely that you know, I have a friend who speaks extremely bluntly in a way that is very much like the way Yotasuke speaks, and so I also saw them in him a lot, just like in his communication skills and the way that he chooses to communicate things.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. Hashida is definitely my favorite, but I really enjoy Yotasuke. Yeah,
Hashida is also of the prep school crew. I love Hashida so much.
He's just such a golden retriever. He's like, I'm here because I like art, so I like looking at art. That's my favorite thing.
Great is perfect to me.
It's so sweet.
I loved the detail. I know it's in one of the bonuses, but I was reading on K-manga, which doesn't have the bonuses, unfortunately, except for the first volume, which I was able to get. But I know that he has 3 older sisters.
He does.
Was that explored in the bonuses? Okay.
Yes, there's like a bunch of extras where they're like trying to find out if Yaguchi is hot or not, so that he can like introduce them.
It's such a good character character detail that yes, that sort of character would have 3 older sisters. You know,
absolutely. And they all have the same braids, and so does I think his mom. Like, they all have the braid hair. It's very cute. In one of them, they're all like braided up, and I just think I saw the character design, and I was like, that one's going to be my favorite. I know that for sure.
And he also felt like, again, kind of like, it's interesting that him and Yotasuke come together as a pair because they're friends and they go to the same high school together. Because I also felt like it's not pushed quite as much. But I felt like he was a really interesting foil to Yatora as well. And that like, he is like, it's, you know, the point that they exaggerate for the character where he is like extremely uninhibited. He like clearly has like an art fetish, like, and like, I think they acknowledge that in the manga. They make like, it's a comedic point that's hammered home. But like against Yatora, who like is so inhibited and like really doesn't know what he wants a lot of the times, you know, it felt like an interesting point of contrast. Yeah, I'm thinking more 100-line thoughts. Please know I'm self-censoring extremely.
You did right. He's literally Yugamu in our notes here.
He is literally Yugamu.
I really liked him interacting in the prep school as just like, he's the guy who's here, like, yes, he's in prep school, so like there is an element of seriousness to put the money forward to go to prep school in order to take the exams, but he's the kind of guy who's like, I'm also just doing this to like for the love of the game. Like, I'm just doing this for fun.
Game,
like,
dude.
if I don't make it in, whatever. Like, I had a good time, and that's what matters.
I mean, in his specific case, it's also because like he can afford to go to private school.
That's
right?
it's true.
So he doesn't need to get into Tua. But you're absolutely right. That's like the role he's playing in the prep school.
And I think that's a really important role when there's every other character is so intense. Having that little comedic relief or lightheartedness, I really appreciate. I also like how they always draw him with the little three, the little cat face that shows a little bit of being very mirthful, kind of a little stinker of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you are. His volume cover does have bisexual colors on it, so I was projecting a little bit.
It's true.
It's right there.
He makes me feel like I know what he is, but also I know what Tsubasa Yamaguchi is, which is somebody who did yaoi manga in her younger years, which I did look up that is something that she did. I think maybe under a pseudonym.
Yes.
Amazing.
No, I can confirm.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
My two favorite characters in the book are Saiki and Upa Sensei.
They're great.
I love Oba Sensei.
Oba.
I would like to
So-
say that when I was reading this the first time, I came in the chat and I said, is this a safe place for me to say that the teacher is really hot?
And we were like, which one? 'Cause
And I
either way, you're right.
Sensei yet. I had just met Saiki. Both very good.
There's a thing between chapters. There's like little, like panel things where there's
Oh my
one where
God,
they
yes.
list everybody's height, and it lists Oba Sensei as like 6'1", and I just started sweating.
Big
Oba
woman.
Sensei
big-
so much.
And she's so loud. She's. I took a
Yeah,
picture
she's loud.
of
She's just
one of the
laughing all the
panels
time. It's so
Big
good.
woman.
where she's calling Yaguchi into a teacher-student meeting, and she's like, Yaguchi!
Yes.
And it's so
Yeah.
big, it's like breaking the panel because it's so big.
She's always coming
She's
in
like
with
the
weird
perfect teacher,
animal
too.
facts.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she'll just like call them in a conference and be like, so this sucks. You understand that, right? Here's
Okay,
why.
you get
Like,
that
but in
it
a very
sucks? Cool,
sweet
let's
way.
move on.
Like, and then laughs in his face. And it's like, this is exactly what he needs. Like, everyone needs to stop treating him so like delicately. She just has this incredible personality. I loved her throughout.
I really liked Saiki. I loved her.
Saiki?
Saiki. Yeah.
The art club teacher.
The art club
she's
teacher. I loved
amazing.
her. Her extra was also very funny.
You're introduced to her like in this scene where like they're doing like elective art. It's the scene where Yatora like does the Shibuya painting. It's burned into my brain now,
Yes,
so I'm
so
just
does
gonna keep
she
saying
not
Shibuya. And his friend is like, my favorite site is like my girl's chest or whatever. And she's like, oh, you should draw her boobs. Like,
Do it.
like,
Yeah.
do it.
They're like, she would totally flip if I drew her boobs. And she's like, I think that's a really lovely idea, actually. You should definitely do that. And then he frickin' does. He draws her boobs.
Yeah.
And it's great.
It's
Good
great.
for him. No, there's an extra for her where it was like she was doing like a 2 truths and a lie sort of thing.
Oh my god, yes!
I
really liked
which
that.
volume was that in? I don't remember, but there was like, it was something about like, there's a really big age gap between me and my husband. My husband is a super rich, powerful CEO. He gave me an island for her as a wedding gift. And like the other one was also something ridiculous. And they're like, only one of these is false. Like, what the hell?
How is only one of these false? What are you doing?
And I'm like, you feel like the type of person that would say all that, say one of them is false, but actually none of them are true.
So possible. Yaguchi really lucked out with teachers that are positive influences in his life because he got two
Truly.
really, really good art teachers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Stay tuned in the manga, I guess.
Oh,
So you got, is it perhaps college art teachers that aren't such a good influence or aren't such good teachers? I wonder who could have possibly ever experienced that.
I just have to say, I love the complication, and I won't get too deep into it because it's not the books, we're not the volumes we're talking about, but I love the complication that Tuat brings to a lot of the things that we've talked about. I'll say I don't love a lot of the new casts that we're introduced to. I think the cast in the first 6 volumes is much stronger, but yeah, I think a lot of, if you were interested, I think a lot of some of the things that we're talking about a lot of them are explored in later volumes. Now, the Yuka stuff mostly just disappears. So that doesn't get solved in a
Probably for the
way.
best.
yeah.
Just imagine her off having a better life.
Yeah.
Off page. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I didn't enjoy reading this almost at all, but I am kind of intrigued. Like, I do kind of want to continue just to see how it changes once he gets to college. Like that feels like such a big shift in what is possible to explore there, that it does kind of make me want to go like, is this going to get better? Or, is this going to like go into territory that I find more interesting? I don't know. Certainly not like first on my list, but I don't know if I'm ready to entirely write it off.
Yeah. I think if you're looking for like wholesale questioning of like his entire approach to life and like the class elements of that, you're not going to get that. But are you going to get people that challenge him? And are you going to get more nuanced portrayals of the people around him? I think so.
Yeah. I need him to get his ass kicked a little more. And I do feel like this book is so in his head. Like it is so from his point of view that I was really missing like just anybody else with a developed character. That's another moment where at some point Oba says to him like, you need to be more self-centered. And I was like, no, don't tell him that. Like, this has been 600 pages of him only thinking about himself. Like, what are you saying? So a little more, spread out the spotlight a little would be nice.
I just have one more thing I want to bring up before we get to questions, which is I would feel bad if we didn't talk about Mori senpai.
I wanted so much more of Mori senpai.
I did. Every time she showed up, I was like, yeah, she's back. Oh no, she's
and then they miss each other. I'm like, no.
They keep missing each other.
I mean, it's such a good storytelling bit that they like never run into each other. It's so good. It's like one of the smaller things that also makes it into the live action movie that I actually really enjoy. I'm the weirdo who likes a live action movie. Not very many people do, but their relationship makes it in there, and they have a lot of scenes where they just bypass each other on accident.
I like her as kind of haunting Yaguchi's life in this way, where so much of how he decides to shape his future comes from like one particular emotional response that he had to art that Mori senpai did. In a lot of ways, I think there are these moments where it feels like he is still chasing the high of the emotional response he had to Mori's art in a way that he doesn't find again that often. And I think that's also very interesting.
Relatable. The scene where they like draw together is also pretty memorable to me. It's one that I think about a bunch.
Yeah, I did laugh out loud when he thought to himself, "Why does she want a drawing from me? ... Is she bullying me?"
Yeah, that's very funny. Why could she possibly be being nice to me? I don't understand.
What does she want?
So when I was reading volume 2, it just reminded me of like this little, I don't know if it was on a post-it. It looks like it was drawn on a post-it. This little comic that like I saw ages ago on social media and that has kind of always stuck with me is this little 4-panel comic by Linda Berry. And this is like the entirety of volume 2 to me could be summed up by this comic. And it's, if you've seen it before, it's a drawing of a woman and her kid, and she's like looking at the piece of art hanging up on the wall, which is supposed to be like a Madonna piece, essentially. She's like, I'm not sure how to look at art. Her kid asks what's supposed to happen. She's like, something big, a revelation. Suddenly you just understand. I'm not sure how to make it happen. And she holds her kid. Her kid asks, how about you lift me up so I can see it better? She picks up her kid and is holding her kid, and it like reflects the piece of art. And I've always really enjoyed that comic. I feel like I've really, ever since I saw it, like it has not left my brain. And so as soon as I was reading this one, I'm like, this is exactly like that comic I read that I saw that one time. But I just think like that to me is what volume 2 was. So I just thought that was a nice little comparison I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
I think that this story talks about talent a lot. What does it mean to be talented comes up a lot. And I think that's interesting. Probably it stuck out to me a lot because this is something that not just I as an artist, but a lot of artists deal with throughout life, of people both like praising artists for being talented, putting artists in like a separate category of like artists can do this and your average Joe can't, or whatever. And I don't know that I necessarily have anything particularly profound to say about it, but I think that it's Yatara talks a lot about, I am not talented. Like, I am not, specifically, he compares himself to Yotasuke a lot. And he says, like, Yotasuke is a talented artist. I am not a talented artist. I am just a hard worker. And I am trying to work hard to get as good as the talented artist. And it kind of feels like that is maybe the perspective that like the whole story is taking, and I don't think that that is as interesting as the truth, which I think somebody brings it up to Yaguchi at some point. But like talent, I won't say that there are definitely times there are people for which you have a particular affinity in your life. There are things that people are more drawn to doing than other things. I am not a numbers person. I don't hate numbers in the way that I think I did as a child, but I've never been drawn to explore mathematics in any way, but I have been drawn to explore art in a lot of ways, and that has shaped the way that I've grown up, and that led me to put a lot of time into the study of art and into what I wanted to make and making art. And so I think you could call the dedication to a craft a talent, but I think that there is no such thing as just like you are talented at art. I don't think talent is like a universal truth in that way. And so I think that kind of makes Yaguchi's character interesting in a particular way to me, of like he is sort of separating himself from his fellow artists in a way that I don't know is particularly constructive, but I don't know that that's anything that's ever going to come up really in the story, because it feels like it's sort of being said as a truth of like, there are people who are talented at doing art and there's people who work really hard at doing art, and they both make good art, but they're different categories of people.
Yeah, that distinction is very weird to me as well, especially because like if talent exists, Yotaro has it. Like he just started and he is immediately so good at it. So but there is this running thing of him constantly saying like, the only reason I'm good at art is because I work so hard at it, which kept striking me as so bizarre, because it's like, so does everybody who does it. Like,
do you think everybody's not working hard? Yeah. We're all working hard. Let's get you some fruit.
Yeah. There is a sequence that like, I actually really liked how this was depicted. It is in the exam period where they have to do a sketchbook. And this is all, I guess I could just send this to you guys in the chat. It's a series of a couple of pages that are all like pages of his sketchbook with him thinking over it. I just really like that I feel like, I don't know, in a lot of ways, the art in this book felt very safe often. And I really like when it did stuff like this of breaking the perspective. But what he's saying is, more than anyone else, what I have is hope. I believe in my art. And I was like, bro, everyone here is taking the exam to get into TUA. They all believe it. Like they all work hard. They all care about this. It's one of the frustrating things about his character, I think, where he's just like, the thing that he thinks makes him special is just like the baseline that everybody is here to do. It's so bizarre. But I agree with you. This weird distinction between talent and hard work is just so strange, because like, I feel like I wanted him to struggle more. Like I wanted that hard work to mean he had to overcome the fact that he was starting late. And it felt like what it was saying was he was very naturally talented because he was able to go from zero to where he is now.
Yes.
Which is kind of the opposite of what it seems to want to say.
Yeah.
I don't know. The talent versus work thing is very, very odd here.
I feel like, okay, not to be like too like uncharitable to Yamaguchi, but like I feel like she recognized that, hey, this is a problem that's happening a little bit, and she's like, I'm just gonna have him be a total workaholic and that'll be the solution to this. And I'm like, I don't know if that's like the actual solution to like making him work for it, you know, and making it believable, because it's like you can totally make characters who are super determined, you know, and like that is like a defining characteristic, is them being very stubborn and being very determined and resilient, to really interesting ends. Shout out Takumi. But like, yes, I really resonated with all of what you were saying, and it was really frustrating watching him like go through those like thoughts and those motions and felt like they were relatively unchallenged, because I was just like both of these things can be true, but what has been shown in the story so far is an incredible amount of talent that he should be able to recognize and be proud of. And if he's not, then the narrative should be, you know, aware of that and critiquing it a little bit more.
I agree. And I think she tries to start to address this with the like him starting to get like hives and start to like physically break down and she's going into the exam. And like, I think that ends up being like a little bit of a surface level, like, hey, take care of yourself, instead of like an examination of like the things that he believes about himself to be true versus like what he's actually doing. Yeah, I'm with you. It kind of falls flat.
as a side note, at one point in this book, they talk about Yaguchi doing 15-hour days doing art. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
it.
Don't do 15-hour days. Don't normalize a 12-hour class day. Don't do this. Don't read this and think that this is what art needs to be. It's not. You get maybe on a good day you get like 4 hours of actually good working on art. Like that's it. You don't need to do more than that. Like
Yeah, like, and as like, because I also felt like how it was introduced as well was like, it almost still felt like low-key glamorized, like him getting hives and everything. And it's like a really great
like
counterweight too. And like, I won't go into super details because it is technically spoilers and everyone should read this, but like Haikyuu deals with that in a really compelling way where it's like the protagonist objectively pushes himself too far and like, it's not quite his fault. He's not like overly faulted for it, but it's seen as something bad. And it's seen as like, yeah, you definitely shouldn't have done this, you know, and there are real consequences, I guess, for it. But as just like a counterexample of one that pulls off a similar plot beat, but much better. But I was like, this feels kind of like, yeah, he worked really hard and now he's like experiencing these things, you know, and it's like a badge of like having worked really hard.
Yeah, he's getting like, rewarded for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, what's this about?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that probably just comes from, again, the quote unquote unofficial tagline, like school tagline that my professors at School for Animation always said was like, oh, our school's motto is sleep when you're dead. And that is that is a big part of like one of the reasons that I ended up pivoting and not going anymore, because that is not the kind of like principles that I want to take forward in my art. And that is not the kind of environment that I want to be like exploring. And I think that kind of idea about art still exists. And I can't speak that deeply to the experience of mangaka, but from what I've seen and from all of the mangaka that I have seen that have literally ruined themselves making manga, I think that it could partially be like the experience of being in that profession in the culture of manga making too. Like can be influencing that.
Okay. Anything else before questions? Okay, we're going to get into questions. We have 2 questions. They are both from Amet.
Shout out.
Shout out.
Shout out, Amet. We love you, Amet.
Amet's first question. Do you think that Blue Period would hit harder for you if you were younger, as in applying to college or that age?
So yes, because it did. Kind of cheating, I guess.
I mean, thinking about me when I was at applying to college age, like in my specific situation, I wouldn't have had, I think, as many of the same issues with the book as I have now. But I think there are certain aspects of it that I would be, like, I feel like all of the technical bits and the speed at which he is learning would feel a lot less of, like, a hurdle for me at that age, because it would be like, this is my life, like things are crazy, everything's going fast. So I feel like that it would hit harder for me at that age, like in a general sense. Specifically to Jill at applying to college age, I don't know like if this is the type of book I would pick up, but I definitely think like it would hit harder in terms of like the narrative overall.
I think the book hit for me, I read it like last year for the first time, and I think it hit for me mostly because I have already deconstructed the parts of myself that like are Yotora's worst tendencies, right? And I think if I had read it when those things were still like at the forefront of myself, I don't really know how I would have responded to it, but my instinct is that I would have just like not understood it.
Yeah.
Like I think I just kind of would have been a little bit too dumb to get it. I think it works for me again, like specifically because I'm past that moment of my life.
I think it probably would have, I mean, it certainly would have hit me differently. I think it would have hit me harder in some ways. Like I was also in a situation where I was like, well, I can't really afford to go to school, so I need to kind of find one that I can somehow find a way to afford to. I was also choosing between like a quote unquote, you know, practical and more like optimistic or what's the word I'm searching for? Just a more sort of lofty, you know, aspirations of what I want to do with myself. I think I was also certainly more of the ways in which I was a shithead were more aligned with the ways that Yotara is a shithead. So I think I probably would have fallen into more of the glamorizing the hard work kind of thing at the moment, which wouldn't have been super healthy for me. But I do wonder if I would have gone a little more or felt the pull to do something a little more out there than safe if I had read it at the time. I think there's a lot that would have hit me stronger, I think.
Yeah, I guess it's like also interesting to think about as well for me in terms of like the context that I received it, because like I wasn't like applying for college. I was like past that point, well past it. But like I think at that time I was also like getting more into comics. So for me, like a lot of my initial love for it was like, wow, comics are so awesome. You know,
comics rule.
Which like I think is like a part of why I mentioned that is because I also think that is like I don't know, I don't like to say this very much, but a valid experience to have, you know, in terms of like how you relate to something, and that like there can be like larger context for like what that piece of work might mean to you, where like that work, you know, maybe it might mean something different, like it does for me now reading it like all these years later. But that's still, that initial experience was still like quite valuable, and I do like still cherish that, you know. And I could see how others would have something similar.
I think if I had read this when I was applying to art school, I would have thought Yotaro Yaguchi was so annoying. I would have thought this whole thing was, I would have been like, a year? He thinks he can do this in a fucking year? Are you kidding me? I've been living and breathing in this.
On the board.
Scout's like, you don't deserve this. You're barely scratching the surface.
You don't even know what you're doing.
You don't even know. You don't even know. I've been in the trenches. Me in a hotel room cutting up my sketchbooks to paste it into a fucking portfolio without having like an actual place to do it. Just reading this and being like, this fucking guy's got it. He's got it so easy. teen scout just being like, this guy doesn't even know. And yes, I would just be Yotasuke. Because I'm Yotasuke, okay? You can put the cups on me.
Amet's second question is, did this make you want to do art studies? Because it did for me. I'm going to answer this first and just say nothing has made me want to actually learn art at all, like getting deeply into the Persona franchise and just becoming like a full-on weeb. So it wasn't this book, it was everything else.
It didn't make me want to, like, this book specifically did not make me, like, give me the drive to do art, but it did make me think guiltily about my sketchbook down in the basement that I have been abandoning for the past 2 months. Of like, oh, I really should get back to practicing, shouldn't I? Oh, I really do need to work on that art that I promised people, shouldn't I?
Yeah, the first time it did motivate me. The second time, maybe like out of spite. I don't know. Like,
I'm not doing it this time.
Just because, like, I do really enjoy having these critical conversations, like about like stories, and it is really interesting to try and figure out, like, okay, I'm really not gelling with Yotaro's character, and like, why is that, you know, and like, what would be a more satisfying answer to this, you know?
Yeah, it did not do that for me, which is interesting. These stories usually do, like when we read Look Back, or even Witch Hat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially with Witch Hat, I felt.
Yeah, give me a feeling of like deep, like heart yearning to do something artistic. This didn't. What it did do is make me want to go to museums more. The scene where I go to the museum, I was like,
oh my God,
man, it's been too long.
Guys, I want to go to a natural history museum I want to go to it so damn much. I love them.
I want to go to a museum so bad after reading this book.
I want to go to an art museum with you so desperately. I feel like that would be the most fun thing ever.
I would love that. I would take any of you to an art museum and walk around. You would have to leave me behind. I'm the most annoying person in like the art museum party, because I won't move on from a room until I've like looked at everything on the walls and looked at all of the little things.
No, that's what I did the last time I went to an art museum. We were there forever.
Shaking your hand. This did make me pick up my sketchbook, but not necessarily in an inspired way. I think it was maybe a little bit of that Yotasuke spite, where I was like, Yatara is doing all this art. I should make some art. If he's making art, I can make art right now. I'm gonna pick up my sketchbook. I'm gonna show that guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna
show that teenager.
Scout beefing with teens.
Me beefing with teens. It's hard to be a teen. It's okay, teens.
Yeah.
It's tough out there.
It's tough out
Sorry
there.
to beef with you.
We've been going for like 2 hours, so I think we should get into further reading and get out of this one. Further reading. I am personally going to recommend the Blue Period live action movie. In the US, it's available on Amazon Prime, but I recommend that you get creative and find it elsewhere. Like we said before, we cannot recommend the anime. Your mileage may vary regarding the live action movie, but I've enjoyed it both times I've watched it. So
Can I ask why you don't recommend the anime? Because I never watched it.
It is lifeless and has no charm. Has like none of the things that I'm enjoying in this book whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunate.
I was just curious.
You could do so
like,
much with it.
You could do so much
The
with it.
animation is also bad and like
that was
hard
like
to
the
watch.
fear when everybody was like hearing that Witch Hat was getting an anime. They're like, oh my god, if the art style is bad, like this is gonna be the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely that makes sense. Thank you.
I will say, don't watch the movie on its own. Like, I think it's only enjoyable if you've read the book. Like, when I say this is like a 6 or 7 out of 10 movie, like I just happen to enjoy it a lot. Tsubasa Yamaguchi also has a series called She and Her Cat that I have not read, but that I understand people enjoy. There's also Kamiya by Tsubasa Yamaguchi. Who put that one in there wants to talk about it?
So, quick side note, She and Her Cat is actually a manga adaptation of a Makoto Shinkai short film.
Okay.
Ooh.
And I believe that was also her thesis project at university when she decided she wanted to be a mangaka. And that was what got picked up by Kodansha and was her sort of debut in terms of official manga. But Kamiya, to me, it's like a really interesting example because it's this anthology. It was published in an anthology in the US, like called Nude Model, I think, but that's the name of one of the short stories in it. And Kamiya is specifically from, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, 2022. I might be wrong. It's somewhere around there. But to me, it stands out as an interesting example of I want her so badly to free herself from the chains of Blue Period, because I think there's some mangaka that like sit on series for a really, really, really long period of time. And it's not that I want Blue Period to necessarily end. I'm not caught up with it. I can't speak on if the story has like closed out everything it needs to, but I really want her to do other work because I think she could really benefit from a clean slate. And I think Kamiya is a really interesting story. It's very funny how much like spicier, I guess, like Nude Model is when Blue Period is very conspicuously absent of like any sex life for Yatora, which is kind of hysterical. But and yeah, I just think like Kamiya it was like way more interesting when I read it. Yes.
I just said this in chat, but I actually do think, just to give you an opinion, is that I think Blue Period could really stand to come to an end. Like,
okay, yeah.
At volume 16, I'm like, cool, I think we've said everything we need to say in this story. And I know there's 2 more volumes that have been published. So
yeah.
Another book about artists putting in the work that I think absolutely does it better is Look Back by Tatsuki Fujimoto. We actually did a test episode on that book for this show. And if you want to find that, you can find it in the Discord. I believe it's pinned in the In Sequence channel in the TWG Discord.
Then we will pin it.
If it's not, we'll get it pinned.
If you ever hear us talk about the shapes of speech bubbles in manga, that you'll understand the origin of that if you go listen to the test episode.
Did someone want to talk about Goodbye Eri?
Yes, that was the one I added. So Goodbye Eri is also a one-shot by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who is the mangaka of Chainsaw Man, who Bluzo mentioned earlier. Goodbye Eri is also about the creative process, but it is a far different story than Look Back, and it is also very much like Blue Period's earlier stuff. Well, I guess this entire arc is very much about like how to get your vision across and how other people perceive your art versus how you are perceiving the art you are trying to make. Very interesting one-shot manga, I will say. It may not resonate for everyone, but it is definitely covering some similar themes.
And then lastly, there's Blank Canvas, My So-Called Artist's Journey by Akiko Hagishimura. I'm guessing on how you pronounce that one. I've actually never read this book, but it gets brought up in conversation with Blue Period a lot because it's doing similar things narratively. And I often hear that people usually like one and not the other. It kind of goes back and forth. So you might like that. In fact, they bring it up on the manga splaining episode about Blue Period because I believe they did Blank Canvas first. They read that book as well. So also check out the manga splaining episode on Blue Period if you liked this one. Thank you all for listening. Please do support your local library or comic shop. They need your support. In Sequence is a member of The Worst Garbage. You can find us at theworstgarbage.online, where you can also find a link to our Discord and join us and talk about the books that we talk about on the show. And panelists, is there anything you want to share? We can start with you, Bluzo.
Yes, I don't know if this is the proper place for it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I just really want to plug my friend's comic, which is actually coming out the day before this episode drops. It is, so my wonderful friend Elle Shivers has a comic coming out called Anniversary, and it is a webcomic that will be published on NeoCities. And you can just find it at anniversarycomic.neocities.org. It's a very easy URL. It is a queer medieval-esque erotica comic, and it's really, really fantastic. I've had the pleasure of being able to, read like a lot of the earlier versions of it, and it truly, like, Elle really outdoes himself. I mean, he's like an amazing comic artist, and I'd highly recommend checking out a lot of his previous work, but Anniversary, really, really wonderful, and everyone should check it out. It is now out when you are listening to this episode for free online webcomic.
Let's go. That sounds like it rules.
Killer plug. Do you want to shout out where people can find you before we continue with
I
where
should
people can find
probably
us?
say that too, right?
Because I think we should check out the stuff that Bluzo makes, because it's also very good.
Yeah.
Yes, so I do comics and games. I'm mostly on Blue Sky. You can find me there at 63 Shoo. That is 63CHOUX. I also have a website, which is just that.com. And yeah, I'm actually working on redrawing a comic that I put out last September. I have no clue if it'll be out come time of this episode releasing, but maybe check my social media and see if it is. But yeah, that's me.
63 shoe buns. Maybe more.
Maybe more.
Correct.
You can find me at the usual spots, plottwist.card.co for all my links. When does this episode come out? I don't have anything to plug. I'm like trying to think ahead. I'm like, I ain't got nothing going on.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything particular to plug, but you can find everything I do at robinb.card.co or find me on Blue Sky at Robin Bombas.
You can find me on Blue Sky or Tumblr at Humble Goat. I have been keeping up with my daily sketches again now that 2026 is going. So if you want to see those, I post those on my Blue Sky every day. Do my best to keep up with that. And I'm also going to be sort of documenting my reading journey on Blue Sky this year. So if you're interested in hearing about the things that I read, or like seeing the things I read, or seeing what I draw every day, check that out. That's sort of an ongoing thing. It's not a particular plug, but check it out.
Yeah. And as always, you can find my videos at youtube.com/@flowstatecrit. I don't think I have anything particular that will be out around this time, but I will definitely have something up around then. And yeah, I think that's what you should go to for me. Thank you all for listening to this one, and be sure to check in next time for our episode on Persepolis. And we will talk to you then.
See you then, everybody.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
TWG, The Worst Garbage, online.